events with Silicon Brighton for the last couple of years. And our event is called Marketing Matters, but they have loads and loads and loads of other events. They're all community driven. They're all volunteer led by amazing geniuses from Brighton and Hove. I can't even list them off because I'm not a technical person, but you've got Python, R, Azure, Microsoft and AI events. So if you're into that sort of thing and you don't know about them yet, you need to go on and have a look. They're great places to meet like-minded people and also people that don't know about tech that are very interested. So it's a great old group. So that brings us to today's topic, which is all around Google Consent Mode. So the reason I'm chairing this panel today is not because I'm a Google Consent Mode expert. It is because I heard the rumblings of confusion and panic across our client base. So we are Trapeze Media. We are a digital marketing agency that was born from social media and now run paid search, paid social ads. And so as the latest Google Consent Mode update came forward as it did, we saw general panic. So the experts are here next to me. We have Dani Herrmann, who is part of Trapeze Media. She is a senior digital marketing manager, manages all of our paid social, paid search campaigns, and was kind of cornered by me to go to a load of Google events and meet a load of data experts and basically get under the skin so that we could advise our clients of exactly how to communicate what was happening within their businesses, as well as work with their web developers to make sure that everything was implemented correctly, etc., etc. So Dani will tell you a bit more about that shortly. And then over here we have Daniel Perry-Reed from Measurelab. We met Daniel 3 weeks ago at his GA4 training as part of Brighton SEO. And it is no exaggeration to say that it was fantastic. And Dani and I were, believe it or not, captivated for the whole time of GA4 training, which I didn't know was possible. So straight away after the event, I was like, we've got to ask Daniel if he'll be on our Google Consent Mode panel. And it was met with equal enthusiasm and I think a fondness for talking all things Google Consent Mode version 2. So why don't you give us a little bit more about yourselves and why you're passionate?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Kitty, and thank you all for coming despite the really rainy morning we've had here in Brighton. Google Consent Mode, for me, as Kitty kind of explained, really became a very hot topic at the start of March in terms of our clients experiencing kind of a drop in web sessions that they recorded in GA4, alerts from Google in terms of Google Ads compliance, that this is something they need to immediately be aware of, and something that we help guide them through. And as Kitty explained, I'm looking after paid ads for Trapeze Media. So that's the Google side of things of PPC, but also paid social in terms of Meta and also TikTok. And a lot of our clients are in the hospitality space in London and across the UK. And for them, it's really important to be able to see what's happening in terms of their conversions, in terms of their booking data, in terms of the web traffic and sessions on their website. And everyone's been aware that cookies sooner or later going to be phased out. Google is a bit late to it and has just announced another delay in terms of their own Chrome browser for next year. But it's just all about being ready and not being intimidated by the changes that are coming, but just really seeing this as an opportunity as a business, and also knowing, okay, what do I have to do to be compliant now? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but there are some steps that you need to do in order to still be able to use the whole Google suite of products. So this, even if you don't run any Google ads, this is going to affect you, because you want to be able to use GA4 to see what's happening with your website and just still be able to have track conversions and to be compliant with EU privacy law as well. So this is just something that you all have to kind of be aware of and be on board and implement. In terms of personalized ads, this is something, if you run Google Ads, if you don't implement consent mode version 2, it's just really going to stop you using personalized ads in that data, and just be worst case, Google could actually also suspend your account. So this hasn't happened yet, but it could really happen. So you need to be aware of just getting compliant. And anyone here in the room hopefully has a consent banner already in place, because that's on your website, because that's really mandatory and very important. So I'm going to pass on to Daniel for a little introduction as well before we dive a little bit more into the topic as well.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? My name's Dan. I work at a company called Measurelab, or a little boutique analytics agency. We work within the field of marketing, but just do the analytics side of things. So this is very much within our topic of conversation that we've been having over the last couple of years. Everything from consent banners, cookie deprecation, to consent mode, and everything in between. And very similar to Dani and Kitty, working with marketing teams and marketers around how the hell do you work, continue to do what you're doing in a marketing context when you can't do it as well anymore, or you can't track as well anymore, and all sorts of things like that, even talking GA4 as well. How do we do year-on-year reporting now that we can't track everyone that visits the site? So lots of these kind of changes are the big topics of conversations that I'm having, and I think we're going to dive into today. That's it.
So I've been wandering around the room asking everybody sort of a little bit about who you are and why you're here. And the kind of commonality is understanding where your outlook sits in amongst everybody else. Like, am I doing the right thing? What would other people be doing? So by the end of this, we'll open it up to everyone to kind of have a little Q&A and open forum discussion, because sometimes these things are, when they are kind of stressful, you can make you shut down and be like quiet about something that you might not be so confident about. So we will open up to the floor. But with that in mind, why now, and why is this having such a kind of a ripple effect at the moment, considering that this has been something that's been rumbling and coming into play for a long time? And what are the things that people should be doing to get on top of the incoming future?
Well, the first thing is this isn't a new thing. So we've already mentioned consent mode is in version 2. So there was a version 1. We also know that this is a reaction to the Digital Markets Act, where Google enforced it. But this is nothing new. This is just the legislation being forced upon Google. It hasn't changed really since GDPR came into effect in 2018. So the reality is, and I suppose why we're here talking about it now, and probably why you guys are here, is that this should have happened since 2018. And because it was on us to sort it out as advertisers and business owners and to website owners. But if it hasn't happened, then Google have basically set a line and saying on the 6th of March, you have to start respecting consent, which is kind of like we should have been doing that already. And so this isn't really anything new, but what we're finding is a lot of businesses weren't respecting consent up until the 6th of March deadline. So all of a sudden, Google started enforcing it, and because of the DMA. And so we're finding a lot of change happening now. And so when I've worked with lots of different businesses over the years, and everyone has gone through this shift of not being able to measure everyone, not having 100% accuracy in terms of conversions or sessions or traffic. But depending on when you implemented or when you started respecting your cookie banner, in the last 5 years, I've worked with different businesses at different points. I think, I suppose we can refer to them as laggards. Laggards to them to doing this now are just, oh shit, we have to do this now. By the 6th of March, we've been forced to do it. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is just the last couple of businesses, people, marketing teams, kind of getting on board with respecting their users' consent. But it isn't anything new. There's just Google told us, so now it's real.
Yeah, and maybe to add to this, beyond Google, it's just really part of the wider movement to give users more privacy rights in terms of EU privacy laws, and also just in terms of general awareness that users becoming more savvy and just really also expect to have more control over their data. They're more hesitant giving their data over, and they expect brands and businesses to be responsible with their data. So what can brands do to really communicate and enable trust in the data that they request from users? That will be really important going forward. How do you communicate this? And also, how do you kind of almost like a back and forth bargaining? How do you convince users to give you your data? What do they get out of this? Will there be any discounts available? Will there be an enhanced user experience? Will this allow more personalization? So this is kind of something that needs to really, some thought needs to be put across. And in terms of consent banners as well, so we often see them as these little kind of pesky things that we just need to click away in order to get to the content that we want to find on the website to solve a problem and actually see the products. But kind of thinking about that this will be the first touch point going forward now that any customer or user will have visiting your website with your brand. Kind of how can we make them kind of more inviting, less kind of, I don't know, like just an admin thing. I think that's really a valid point as well for you web developers. And something else that I've kind of come across as well is kind of in terms of the events that Kitty mentioned that I've been attending over the last couple of weeks talking about this topic. It's just generally from a marketing perspective, the marketeers have to really upskill their kind of data knowledge in terms of data analysis and also in terms of data science to really keep on top of these trends. So this is really important. If you have a business, if you have a marketing team, don't let them be in a silo, let them speak to the web developers back and forth and just really make sure all that knowledge there is synergized, and that's really important.
So something that's been cropping up and I think really been formalized over the last couple of years is this idea of ethical marketing as well, which is the next layer. So everything we're talking about has changed the process and the kind of the systems and the tools and the admin that's been introduced. So you can't just throw a TikTok tag on your website or a Microsoft tag. If you want to start marketing, then you have to go through, okay, update the cookie policy. Does that, how long do we retain data for? What cookies it's setting? And so it's adding this element in there. But I think this is a really good opportunity to go beyond just compliance and thinking about the kind of legal marketing and just being legally compliant to say, okay, well, is this what we want to do as a brand? Is this what we want to convey? What is our stance to this? Ignoring, or not ignoring, but doing the minimum of the legal compliance, but saying, what then do we want to do? How do we want to gain that trust, that respect, and communicate with our visitors, with our customers, really, about what we do with their data? I think with a lot of the conversations that we've been having is the technicalities, which is almost a frustration to continue doing what we're doing. But this is a really good opportunity to rethink this and say, okay, well, what would we expect? What kind of ethics would our brand portray, and what do we want to do? And yes, that might change your campaign structure and your marketing strategy slightly, but this is all in a good perspective and legally compliant perspective. Could be a good thing.
So this is kind of the earned consent sort of topic, and a real big shift from third party to first party data. And so what are some practical advice and tips on actually increasing that first party opt-in and earned consent in terms of logins or, creating websites that are...
I mean, something that we really see increasingly in terms of brands that kind of are in e-commerce is to have signed in user accounts. So you will see this more and more because that really allows you kind of to build up more first party data and to just keep everything more streamlined. We talked about gaining trust and kind of just really communicating that more across, being seen as an ethical business in terms of data policies. And then I think on another perspective, it's just really also from a business side, if you know first party data is going to be the way forward and it's going to be really important for your business, what you're doing now to enable this in the future? Do you currently have a data strategy for that? Are you just collecting blindly all personal data, like first party data that you have, or do you really actually think of it from kind of working backwards? What do I want to actually measure? And does it make sense to collect everything and then it's just stored somewhere and I don't have any analysts to actually gain any beneficial insights from this? So just really concentrate on the kind of key data that you want to collect, label it correctly, have an analyst knowing what you actually want to get out of that data, and also make sure that you have consent collecting this data. I think that's really key.
But the first thing I'd add to that is with first-party data, you need to make sure you've got it to begin with, because a lot of brands, businesses, they don't have a data warehouse or repository or a data hub. And so saying that we move to a first-party data strategy, yes, having a broader data strategy is important, but do you have access to that? Do you have any first-party data to use, or are you relying on logging into Google Ads or logging into Google Analytics? If you don't have a copy of that data, if you don't have control of it, it's not first-party. You don't have it. And so I would always say, going back, and this is, I suppose, the industry, we haven't finalized or kind of collectively defined this name, but it's the role of like a technical marketer, and saying, okay, well, there's lots of systems and tools, especially a lot of first-party data is now powering AI and some LLMs and all sorts of machine learning models off the back of it. But you can't even think about that until you at least have the data. And so I think always the first step is, okay, do we have access to this? Do we own this data? Do we, accessibility is a key part of this, because you can't start powering your ad strategy off your first-party data if you don't technically have first-party data yet, and if you don't have access to it, right? So there's lots of different ways around that, but I'll always start right at the very beginning and saying it's all well and good saying first-party data, but get some first-party data.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a Silicon Brighton event without mentioning AI. So if you have your Silicon Brighton bingo cards, you can you can stand the AI box. But AI is a part of this conversation. So we've got Google's AI modeling. Now, what could you tell us about that? How much should we be relying on that? What should we be inferring from Google's AI modeling when we look at that data?
Yeah, I think to kind of just explain what is also meant with that is kind of in terms of consent mode. So when a user doesn't give consent for their data and the cookie isn't dropped, Google wants to make sure that there's still a way of kind of recovering those lost conversions. And they offer an AI kind of behavior-based kind of enhanced modeling that's available. And there's different ways of implementing consent mode as well, like a basic mode and an advanced mode. If you implement it just in a basic consent mode, then it would mean there's just based the modeling on general data sets. But if you have the advanced version, then this is based on anonymized data that gets kind of hashed and sent back to Google and then matched with their kind of custom hash data. And then you have more behavioral modeling. So there's a lot of investment from Google in this side and strong confidence in their AI model. But they also, at the events I recently attended like 4 weeks ago, Google headquarters in London, where they were saying, well, we definitely don't want to overpromise. So we rather under-model rather than over-model. And you also need to actually have enough user data, web sessions, and so on actually already there. So we have something to base the modeling on. We can't uplift and predict anything from nothing being there. So that's really important as well. And that's why it's really crucial that you start implementing it sooner than later. But yeah, I'll let you add to some more AI thoughts there.
Thank you.
Modeling.
Yeah, I mean, here's my cynic brain comes in, and we've been using this for a long time because it's machine learning we're talking about here, and we've rebranded it AI, and it becomes sexy and shiny and cool and new. But we're talking about machine learning, which is using historical data to predict what's going to happen or to change data in some way. Google Analytics 4 has got 3 main types of machine learning that's already implemented. You've got the behavioral modeling, as Dani mentioned, which is for if you meet the thresholds, requirements, you're going to be every single bit of data in Google Analytics is estimated to account for those cookieless users, right? So there's no such thing as accuracy anymore. That's gone. That was pre-2018. There's also 2 other types of machine learning modeling they're doing. They're doing something called conversion modeling, which means when you see conversions in Google Analytics, even with consent, they're reattributing it to marketing channels away from direct, which is happening without you knowing probably. And the last machine learning model they're using is data-driven attribution. So when you start to work out sort of conversion rates and ROI or ROAS for your marketing channels, it's using another machine learning model to distribute the value across the different touch points. So you can imagine you got the raw data set, and then that's now fragmented and partial, and then you kind of fill it up with a machine learning model. You start tweaking it around with a machine learning model, and then you do another machine learning model to reattribute things in between that. It kind of then begs the question of kind of what is it I'm looking at, and why is this not clearer? But I think this is the this is the reality of marketing nowadays. Is that we are relying on the systems and machines to do this for us. We might already have performance max campaigns across Google and Microsoft. We might be relying on these systems and models now already. I think what's happening is that it's becoming more and more apparent, and it's spreading from just beyond our marketing strategy into maybe our web and analytics strategy as well now. And so it's having the ripple effect. You know, someone dropped a stone in the lake and it's just rippling outwards from there. But the thing is, it's not new. These things are already available and happening. I can imagine there'll be enhancements to this. And obviously machine learning is getting cheaper, faster, more accurate and stuff. So maybe those requirements will lower over time. But I can almost guarantee that every one of us is using some kind of model data, whether we realize it or not. And I think maybe that's the thing that I always kind of talk about, is actually like, I don't think it's clear. And I think that the transparency is a key part of this, which Google are known for not being very transparent around. You know, they want green arrow going up, line graph going up, and keep spending money in Google, please, please, please. And I think the only way to do that is to keep your graphs on a upward trajectory, and this is the method they're approaching it. And it's not just a Google thing. We're talking about Google consent mode, but Meta have just announced their version. Microsoft got another one, and they're all approaching it slightly different. So this is not a universal strategy. So Google are going to model their data the way they see fit, and it's a big old black box. Meta's doing the same, Microsoft's doing the same. And I think where the big conversation is now around AI or machine learning or generative AI, or whatever you want to use, is actually go back to that idea of what's your strategy, what's your approach? Do you trust Google to mark their own homework? Do you trust Microsoft to do that as well? And actually, if you say no to that, then you can always adjust it slightly or just be aware of what they're doing. But you can do this yourself. There's no reason why you can't apply these models, especially in the Google stack. I'm more proficient with the Google technology stack, and they make it very easy for it to do yourself. But that comes back to the role of a data analyst, data scientist, or a technical marketer to be able to do that and say, well, again, goes back to the idea of, do you have the first party data to do this on? Otherwise, you are beholden to the giants to be marking their own homework. Sorry, I feel like I got slightly off track there.
No, I thought that was really good point as well, that this is not just kind of a Google thing, but if you run paid social campaigns, you will come across this in terms of Meta as well. And it's just across the board, because everyone is aware of, okay, my conversions, otherwise attribution is going to drop. What can we do to kind of use AI and modeling to just really make sure we still see all those conversions and data coming through, and keep using the advertising platforms, because that's obviously an interest.
This is does anyone remember ATT, Tracking Transparency, from Apple, where everyone got, if you got an iPhone, you would have got a prompt a couple of years ago to be like, allow tracking. Most people said no. I think there was like a 10% opt-in rate. It was mad. Meta reported they lost $10 billion that year because of that one change. And it's not because their advertising ability changed. It's the measurement of their advertising changed. And as advertisers, you see the numbers go down in terms of return on investment. And so you're less likely to spend. And so Google looked at that, and they did, I think, $230 billion last year in Google Ads alone. And they're like, absolutely no way do we want that to happen. So we're going to kind of use a random number generator to keep that number high, so you keep spending money. I'm over simplifying, generalizing, and being slightly derogatory towards it. But the idea there is that the last thing that they want advertisers to see is a lower ROI or a higher CPA because of measurement inaccuracies. And so accounting for that is a huge part of that, because otherwise you can break a company like Meta or Google pretty easily.
So this kind of comes into like communicating within the business what this really means in terms in real terms. One of the things that we've been working on at the agency is how our clients, who are usually, you know, marketing managers, how they communicate to board and stakeholders what's actually happening, because a lot of the time they'll look at the numbers and then they'll panic, especially if an FD gets in the way, so starts looking at numbers, and then it's like, okay, so Dani's done a lot of work on writing up you know, documents to send internally. And Daniel, something you mentioned on one of our meetings in the week was a mindset shift, and what you're talking about there in terms of really being critical over these numbers. How would you how would you approach that internally communicating and looking at what's kind of important from these things?
Well, I think all of what we've said is still useful. I think using the modeling within something like Google Analytics is still very useful. I think it's just my approach, and as you guys will know from doing the training with me, my approach is to be super anal with stuff and actually not use a number unless you can define it yourself. So if you don't know what a session is, you can't optimize against it, because if it goes up or down month on month, you don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. If you don't know what a user is defined as, if you don't know what a page view or a conversion is, having a fundamental understanding of these numbers, I think, and then run with it, right? If your conversion number is estimated based on machine learning models given to it by Google's consent mode, whatever, great. As long as you know that and you're happy with it, and you hopefully won't make inaccurate decisions off the back of it. I think the whole shift comes from or a wrong way of approaching this. Let's start there. The wrong way of approaching this is thinking consent mode is something is a tech thing we have to implement and we move on and continue as we were, because it's not. It is changing everything. So even just going back from, you might be doing a monthly dashboard for the C-suite or the wider business where you report total web traffic. That you can't do that anymore. That's not a number that exists. Total web traffic isn't a number that exists anymore. And like I said, depends on in the last 5 years when you went over that hump of respecting consent. So now you have a small asterisk and saying, okay, well, I can't do total sessions month on month, year on year. Let's say you only recently implemented it. So now what? What do we do? Is that actually, let's think about that. Was that even a useful number? Did anyone look at that? Do we do anything with that? So maybe it's not. And I think in terms of where this is a big shift, I think this is making us all rethink our, not just marketing strategy, but our KPIs. We might have like our marketing KPIs, what our business KPIs or web KPIs, and really kind of picking in and assessing that. And we might find that, oh, look, if we don't do that dashboard for the C-suite, then no one noticed. That having a dashboard was a key thing. Or maybe using estimated data, using the machine learning modeling is a good thing, because it means that they can see a number and it's great, and we'll put a small asterisk at the bottom and we move on with our lives. I think where, like I said, this whole shift is happening is because it does have this bigger ripple effect than a tech thing we need to move past and carry on as we were, because we can't. It's changed an awful lot of stuff. And I do think this is one of the single biggest effect changes I've seen in the last sort of 12 years of doing this job. Because it's not a marketing thing, or not just a marketing thing. It's not just a web thing. It's not just a tech thing. It's not just a legal thing. It's all of those things. And then you can't just do that in isolation, right? It ties into your wider GDPR strategy, dare I say, of how long should we keep data for, data retention strategies, and then you think, oh shit, our CRM, we delete data every 3 years, but in Google Analytics, we've got the last 10 years of data. Shit, maybe we should have thought about this. And I think what it's doing is it's surfacing up a lot of these conversations. And if you didn't have a strong sort of data strategy beforehand, it's making us realize, oh, maybe we should get one.
Yeah, and from an agency side, kind of working with marketing teams and marketing directors, kind of with the businesses that we work with, is really kind of that mind shift. Often there is an understanding there already, but higher up in terms of their senior stakeholders and board level, there just isn't really often that understanding. So we often find that we kind of have to help them communicate this across, in terms of what Kitty mentioned, kind of senior stakeholder briefings, to just really break it down from a kind of technical perspective to just something that's more easily understandable, and also kind of takes away the fear of kind of, oh, there's a loss for me, I'll have less data, I will make less profits, I'm going blind. But to just really kind of open up the eyes in terms of, no, this is affecting everyone. It's a general shift. There's opportunities in this as well, as what you said, kind of actually look at, do we need all this data? What did we do with it? What is actually really kind of the key performance data we need? And then also just really kind of working more closely kind of with other sections of the business. I think we can't just keep stressing this again, but kind of just work in silos. And yeah, so we found this kind of really helpful with our clients to ask kind of, what are the obstacles you currently, the questions you get from board level, how can we help with this, and kind of improve those communications.
So we will come to the room for some questions soon. So you've got a little time to think of them. But I know that you both definitely see this as a positive step overall. It's kind of, getting people's nerves up because of, you know, all the reasons that you've discussed. But I know that you see it as positive, and it's just a shift in mindset. It's actually get on the front foot. So why do you see this as such a positive step?
I think most of all, I mean, we're all kind of, each of us are also web users, are consumers and customers. So it's also in our interest that our data, that we are able to kind of control our data, give our consent, and know what's happening with it. So I think just from that perspective overall, but also kind of literally going forward, what we just said, it just, any business just has to really get the house in order and just really look at their data strategy. And also we didn't need all that data if we don't do anything with it. What you were just saying, 10 years and kind of Google Analytics, nobody's going back benchmarking that much kind of. And it's opening up opportunities also, I think, beyond kind of Google as well, media mix modeling, benchmarking, behavioral modeling, kind of, if you want to analyze your data, you can do this in so many ways, and also think of what you do with first person data, data warehousing, and just really applying your own strategies to it. So I think all businesses will get more creative, and marketing agencies as well. And as us, in terms of professional marketers, we'll also have to upskill and learn kind of new expertise in terms of data science, data analysis.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget, as Dani said, like we are also consumers of this. And if we go onto a website and we say no on a cookie banner, we really want that to be true, right? We don't want the website to then just do it anyway, right? That's just not a good experience. I think that if we said no and they were doing sort of dark pattern methods or using fingerprinting methodologies to restitch that data back together, we'd feel a bit peeved. I think if we said no to something, we want it to be a no, and if we said yes to something, we're happy for it to be a yes. And I think where I think this is all a positive thing is we've got some businesses and some teams that are continuously trying to solve this or work around this using different methodologies. And actually, that's not what people want. People want to say yes or no, and that to be true. And I think, like I say, it might be there'd be a bit of turbulence, but I think overall we're going to be in a better place for it. I think. Again, just putting yourself in the consumer's shoes, it's all about making it like making what you put in your shop window the thing they get. If they buy a t-shirt size medium and a white t-shirt, then you want that to be delivered to them. Why is that any different with data? And I think there's also like another kind of blossoming kind of industry or like approach around data, and it's having like deliberate data. You know, we can't just hoover everything up off a website or an app or a marketing platform and just throw it somewhere and come back to it later. That is what we used to be able to do, but that was never a good thing. And slowly but surely the law is changing and attitudes are changing because it wasn't good. And so I think, you know, harking back to a bygone era is not a good attitude for moving forwards in marketing, in business, in growth. So I think look to the future, and it's only ever going to move that way, I think is only a positive thing. And you can be an early adopter, you can get in front of competition. And there's some really interesting stories. You can maybe dig them out, but IKEA did something like this a couple of years ago where they put data or privacy and data strategy first and foremost in the launch of their new app. And every point of their app, it was like, you can change your privacy settings. It will ask you, it will give you control over it. And they just didn't shy away from it. It wasn't a cookie banner that you made a decision and it disappeared and you can't find it ever again. They actually baked it into their ecosystem and the app itself. And I think that's such a bold move, and saying, look, we trust you. We want you to trust us. We trust you. We will ask consent. We're not going to be dodgy about this. And I think that's I don't know, you don't see many other businesses trying to do that. It's like I said before, it's more of an obstacle, a technical obstacle that people want to get past. Whereas I think leaning into this, I think you can, I don't know, it could be a really cool marketing strategy as well. You know, I think it could be a good brand building exercise.
And at the end of it, you also get something out of it, which is actually more personalized marketing that's relevant and useful for you. So it's a win-win both for the consumer, but also for the brand.
Yeah, although most people never really want that.
Sometimes
you know, it's that kind of thing, accept cookies so you can get a tailored, like a marketing experience. It was like, I don't think that's ever sold anything. But no, I get the point. But I think, you know, it is a value exchange. But I don't know if we figured out what that is yet. You know, like as an industry, as businesses, like what is that value? Because it's very one-sided. Please accept cookies so that we can do all this stuff. We haven't found that the other way around just yet. I mean, I don't think, I mean, as a value exchange, like tailored advertising isn't, isn't that useful for me compared to what they get out of it. So it's interesting to see where that goes. Oh, even if we keep cookie banners, right? Like, and there's a conversation around this, around the whole part of GDPR is to have informed gained consent. And so is having a cookie banner informing your user, or are we all blind to it now and we just either reject all or accept all? I do like to remind my colleagues, and some of them are in the room, that you can't be a hypocrite. If you're in marketing, you have to accept them.
Yeah, I think that's why the IKEA example is really powerful, because it really makes you kind of not just click it away, but constantly interact with it, and you're actually conscious it's there.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's like we're not consciously interacting with cookie banners anymore, right? I think just as people, as humans, I think we're just blind to them. And I think you mentioned a question earlier, Kitty, which I just want to come back to, which is like, how do you get more consent? And it's a really weird concept of like gamifying consent, and there's an industry of like consent optimization happening and all this kind of stuff, which I think is interesting. But I think the simpler the better. The more you can actually be clear about what you're doing and get well-informed consent. That isn't listing 300 vendors with 2,000 cookies. That's not well-informed, and you're more likely to be like, sod this, and just nothing. And I think being super clear, lightweight, giving access to more detail if they want to see that. Generally speaking, the fewer categories you have, the better. The amount of times I see like 15 categories and they've got a vanilla out of the box cookie banner that lists every marketing vendor ever made. And I'm like, well, you only work with 2 of them. Why have you got all of them? And they're like, oh, I didn't know, because what they haven't done is introduced consent management and the cookie banner into their business as usual flow. So some guy they contracted threw a banner on the website 2 years ago and they forgot about it. And that's where things break, and potentially fines can happen, but also trust isn't gained or earned, right? And I think this is where it all comes back to this, baking it into a new process.
Okay, amazing. So, any questions for our panel? Or Ben, was that a hand, or are you literally just scratching your ear?
Just scratching.
Okay, yeah, great.
Hi, so I'm a total novice at all this. So I've set up a new business, and I've set up my own website using ReadyMag, which is a kind of easy no-code thing. It's never asked me about a cookie banner or putting one up. And I've just had this sinking feeling watching you guys go, I haven't thought about a cookie banner. Can you lay out in layman's terms what the obligations are for someone like myself? Like we've got some HubSpot forms on there. I've got some Google ads running. I've got some Google Analytics running. Can you just lay out in layman's terms what I'm actually doing there in terms of what you're talking about and what consent I need to ask for?
Well, first of all, you definitely need a privacy policy as well. And you do need a consent banner, and it might be within the kind of web platform that you're using. You just need to look for it. But otherwise, they are like kind of ready-made solutions that seamlessly integrate with Google as well, consent mode, that are available. Some of them have a free trial or free basic service. Others, you have to pay a small amount a month for it. We can, after the event, also email around a list of them. There's several, like OneTrust, Cookie Yes, Cookie Board. There's loads of them, and they will take you through it. And then you were saying you run Google Ads as well. So that's why it's really important that you also then update if you don't go with one of those kind of integrated solutions, the kind of wording on your consent banner to really comply with Google's consent mode version 2. And so if you run Google Ads, there should be also a reminder that you need to implement consent mode. If you open GA4, there will be a reminder saying you need to kind of implement it. Yes. So get round to opening GA4. There's amazing GA4 training as well that Measurelab and Daniel are doing, and just follow the steps there, and Google Tag Manager as well, so you kind of can decide between basic mode or advanced mode, and just be able to still run personalized ads and not get suspended or penalized.
So
because I'm not that like it's happening in the background. Like I've got some good content on my website and stuff. I'm not looking at particularly anything other than traffic, which sounds like it.
Well, it depends. You're not currently getting respect, which means you're tracking everything, right? Okay, let's pull it right back. So a consent banner. I think lazily as an industry we call it a cookie banner, and it's not just cookies it's affecting. It's a GDPR based banner based on ePrivacy, PECR, is the Privacy and Electronic Communication Regulation, and GDPR rolled into one. It's not just cookies, it does local storage and other things where it should do as well. There's two things you need consent for: processing personal data. So for things like Google Ads and Google Analytics, that means setting a user ID in a cookie, that's personal data you're processing, and also accessing someone's device, which is the act of setting a cookie or setting, because a cookie doesn't do anything, by the way. A cookie is just a text file that lives in your browser. So a cookie doesn't do anything. It's the tags, it's the code, it's the snippets that you've installed or are baked into the CMS that are doing stuff. So that's what you're getting consent for. You're basically asking the user, am I able to set something on your browser, technically a text file on your machine accessing your device, and can I process your personal data to do something with it? If you don't process personal data, and if you're not using any cookies, then you don't need consent. Not every website needs a consent banner or app, by the way. This isn't app, apps are no exception. So the thing about this is, like, and this is where it's hard, right? Especially as a solo business owner or a new marketer, if you're a team of one, or basically, and this is where I said about this new blossoming role of the technical marketer or the marketing measurement specialist or whatever it is, because it's like a really hard thing to ask anyone. Like, you can't ask someone in IT or legal or whatever to do this either. It's a weird kind of blending of all of them. The other thing as well is cookies aren't going anywhere. First party cookies there. Most of them are that you're probably using are that we call essential or necessary. You don't need consent for the fundamental structure of your website. So for example, you don't need to get a consent to set a cookie that remembers you've added something to your basket and you've got a cart going. So there's a difference between, okay, for your business to run, you need to have cookies. But Google Analytics and Google Ads are not mandatory, right? They're not essential for your business to operate, to sell the services or to provide the information or to do whatever. So your forms, for example, you might not have any cookies or tracking on that. To do your business, you need to have a form which sends data to HubSpot. That's all essential. But if you are dropping the Google Analytics cookie or Google Ads stuff or Meta or TikTok or whatever, these aren't. And that's where you need to start thinking about consent. So if you're going into marketing, if you're running campaigns, if you're doing any paid marketing, I would bet my house on the fact that you're setting cookies, and you should at least have a chat with someone about this process. As Dani mentioned, there's a bunch of cookie banners out there. Most CMSs will have an option for you. But I think this highlights something with the kind of the no-code approach to things, where it's then on you, to then think about it rather than relying on the systems and the technology. I think we're just giving you a to-do list, so sorry about that.
But happy to send you some resources as well after the event.
Great, John, here you go.
Hello. My interest is kind of in first-party data because I write like web solutions and stuff. Is there an argument for a new kind of approach where we move away from the standard CMSs and the no code, or a new system that is really optimized for the back end data? For instance, if I'm writing a React front end that every call is an API call to an Azure project, then I know everything about the track through the app and anonymized data about where people land, where they go next, what day, what time, why it happened, things I'm doing outside maybe influencing that. So I have a lot of information without actually having any personal information at all. Should people be thinking more about that approach? And if we presume we're going to lose third-party cookies, which current systems are most likely to suffer when that data goes? I'm thinking about things like e-commerce platforms and CMSs that are hosted, that kind of thing.
So the first thing is third-party cookies won't affect any of those. Third-party cookies is only cross-site tracking, so it's only going to affect advertising platforms like Google, Meta, right, whatever. It won't affect anything. So there's a difference between third-party and first-party cookies. It's only third-party cookies being phased out. They're already gone, except for Chrome. And Chrome have delayed it to next year. So if you're relying on third-party cookies, you're like, for example, any post-impression tracking for ads, only works on Chrome right now. A couple of other Chromium browsers anyway. But the point is that third-party cookies are essentially already gone. Again, it's another kind of like lazy way of even I do this, of saying, you know, cookieless future. What we mean is third-party cookieless future, but I think it's easier and nicer to have the clickbait to say cookieless future. I think with what you're referring to there is something called, I suppose, server-to-server tracking, and actually saying that you have one request from your website, and then from there you've got all the information you need to send to a database, to Google, to TikTok, to whatever, and say, look, why am I deploying third-party code, cookies, and everything on my website when actually I've got all the information already, and I'm doing it 5 times now because each platform is doing their own version of it. And I think this is a really great thing, and in the future I think it's going to be the more common approach. I think kind of a recurring theme of the conversation today is very much around it's a new kind of way of doing something. And at the moment, if anyone uses something called Google Tag Manager or any of the other sort of TMSs out there, if you don't have someone that owns that and knows it very well inside and out, and their focus is on that, then you're not ready for server-side version of that, because it's even more work, admin, and by the way, you have to pay for it because you're managing a server with requests and hits. I think it's an amazing way of managing, governing, and only divvying up the data that you want to send to these platforms. There are tools out there. So Tag Manager has Google Tag Manager rather has a server version, which you could deploy on a server, and you can manage all of your marketing tags that way. You can build your own solution. You don't have to use one of these, but all of these come with costs, either software, licenses, server, personnel, agency fees, which is a big blocker for a lot of people, because we're now saying that you need a technical marketing analyst, and now you're saying you need someone to deal with database management for doing a TikTok tag, you know. So it's a big old change to that, but it all currently exists. The last thing I'll add on to that, if that's okay, is we keep talking about cookie banners and things like that. What we're saying with consent mode and what Dani mentioned about the advanced version of consent mode, saying no in a cookie banner is not saying no to tracking, because tracking happens all the time. Like you mentioned, the equivalent of server logs, basically, and you've got your server-side tracking. Google Analytics still tracks you. It just doesn't have a cookie because that's what you're consenting to. So what that means is you can't attach it to a user or a session. So counting things is always possible. And I think, you know, there is a growing movement, which is no consent, no tracking. And I think this is where the ethics plays a role in. If you want to be compliant, then you can implement advanced consent mode. You can still track everyone doing everything. And, you know, you just don't set a cookie. But as an organization, you might want to do no consent, no tracking, which means it's actually like, well, if they don't give consent, maybe we shouldn't do anything. And just we move on and we do something else. And I think the same would be server-based. And I think that's where it will be more of an internal systems of like, you get a log of everything because it's an API call and you're requesting information. But then what you're doing is you're putting systems and processes in place so that no one can use that data. So whether that's labeling or flagging data or users, or that goes sent into a CRM, for example, a do not message or consent not given, whatever that looks like, it kind of has to be managed outwards from there. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, great.
If you were to take a more cavalier attitude, what are the,
Now it gets interesting.
what are the chances of getting caught? Because I've seen a few sort of headline fines dished out as a small, say, this is me, but as a small e-com company, for example, is the biggest risk just Google saying you can't run ads anymore, or is there a realistic chance of a company being fined?
Again, it's not running ads. You can still do stuff. It's about the measurement of those ads or targeting specific users. So I suppose the vernacular is retargeting. You can't just serve an ad. Like you can't email someone without asking their permission first. You can't serve an ad to someone without asking their permission first. So it's direct marketing, basically. You can still do contextual advertising. You can still run Google Ads campaigns, Facebook campaigns. But if you're feeding in lists of people to target, that's where you need to make sure you've got consent. If you are targeting everyone in a geography-based region, or if you're doing it based on demographics, interests, and their kind of Google's version or Meta's version, you don't need cookie banners or consent for that, because you don't know anything about them. You're letting Google do their thing. You're relying on Google getting the consent to have all that information. But I think this is a key thing, is that you only need consent if you process as a business personal data. Personal data, by the way, can be a random ID. If it's unique to that person, you know, like a cookie, like the Google Analytics cookie, that's personal data. But yeah, you can still do marketing. It's just you can't do remarketing. Essentially everything goes prospecting, and that's why there's a big focus on like things like performance max campaigns and AI-based campaigns of just let Google do their thing and target who they need to target and keep tweaking it so that, you know, we get some results.
Yeah, I think it's to look beyond kind of penalties and fines, but also kind of just really think of, is my marketing still effective? Is the data I hold and kind of the tracking and the measurement, is it up to scratch if I don't implement these changes, or will I lose out going forward because there's all these kind of lost conversions that I can no longer see? And if I want to make use of Google's AI up modeling capabilities, enhance conversions and so on, it's in your own interest to implement it. So I think it's beyond just thinking of, will I get caught out? What is the penalties? But literally it's in your own interest to just really have the best data available and still also do remarketing. I think that's kind of a way forward of maybe thinking and changing the mindset.
I think there's low risk. Going back to your original question, I think the risk is going to be higher as we move through this. I think they sort the reports descending in revenue, and they see who can they find first and make the, like Google got fined on like a couple of hours after introducing GDPR in 2018. Literally a couple of hours after, because they had their sign up to email newsletter pre-ticked box. So again, you can't pre-tick boxes. You have to get opt-in consent and stuff. And they just waited for the midnight, saw Google still doing it, and they went straight after them. Of course, you were the same with Meta, and that's why we hear about Google being fined again.
It's about deterrence as well, and setting an example.
I think it's I get the numbers wrong, but there's a fixed fee or 10% of revenue depending on what's higher. And I think what we'll find is that, especially with you've heard of NOYB, none of your business, Max Schrems, and anyway, they just report everyone everywhere. And the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, which is the UK governing body of things like GDPR, they've got literally a form to report any business you like. So if you find someone's not respecting a cookie banner, throw it up there. And I can only imagine those systems to become easier to use. People become more aware of them. So the risk isn't zero, but you know, I would say that there's low risk for a new sort of small e-com business, for example. But I assume your focus will be growth and getting bigger and selling more and getting more customers, and so it becomes more of a risk and more of a thing to consider.
Nice. Oh, great, Katie. I agree that the cookie banner has become sort of blind to people and habitual as to what you're going to do. So, what do you have any ideas of, like, without the cookie banner being very word heavy, as to why it's a great thing to do? Like, is there what if we thought outside the box? What could we be doing to install in people that it's sort of it's not Big Brother watching. We are just kind of like finding out a bit about you, because we won't get the user journey unless we have that consent mode. So what other ideas can we have other than a cookie banner just being there with a yes or no answer?
Yeah, I think it's kind of making it really engaging and useful. And the example of IKEA was really good as well. That it's not just there as almost like a barrier to get to the actual content, but it's kind of weaved and threaded throughout and seen as useful. And it still needs to have all the right language in there, but you can still make it in a more kind of less technical way and still kind of make people understand what they're actually consenting to. And what you were saying as well, not an endless list of like, nobody's going to go through everything individually if there's like 30 different kind of vendors listed or something. So just to be really practical and kind of, we're going to see so many different, I think, versions and tries of this. And I'm quite excited actually to see what will come out of it.
Well, I've actually got something to add on that one, because that's
Go, Kitty.
That's like my side, right? It's like engaging the customer in a creative way. And unfortunately, I actually disagreed with you, Daniel, on something when you said that you can't convince someone to want to have personalized ads. And yes, not everybody is into that totally. I think, and it comes back to your ultimate point, which is like, what do you want to do with the data? But I think, you know, if you take a jewelry brand that someone's really into, yeah, I want to see when you've got your new products. Yeah, I want to see when you've got these new things. If it's interior design we were talking about earlier, it's like, yeah, I want to know when if you get my preferences just right and you know my style. I don't want to see kind of woodlog cabin.
In terms of travel, actually, kind of, because there's really specific types of travel that you would after, certain experiences. And if I would not just get blanket kind of ads of holidays that really don't interest me, but kind of customized and tailored to my taste, I'd be more likely to engage with it, and I would find that more beneficial.
Yeah.
As the new generation comes through, more. Oh, sorry. Do you think it's a generational thing as well? So as the new generation becomes older, they're becoming more accustomed to having that sort of user, what's it called? You know, seeing what they want to buy and the holidays that they want to take.
We're going to move into more personalized advertising anyway. We're already seeing it in terms of personalized pricing as well. If you go to Boots or Superdrug, if you have a loyalty, a membership card, you have different prices than anyone else. And this will kind of go on and become more and more kind of widespread. So there is, I think, a certain pressure point and probably advantage of that as well.
Sorry, Daniel, I've actually got a blog that I can send you as well. If anyone's interested in any of the things we've mentioned being sent, come and tell me, and I'll write your name down, because I'm not going to blanket email you all a list of things. But I've got a little blog which has got a really nice list of different consent mode banners. And I actually, I think that there is an opportunity there to kind of engage them. And I think it's that additional earned consent, and that's a very valuable person.
Well, I think I was just wanting to kind of mention, like, kind of towards the IKEA example again, but the reason it was so kind of interesting, and I keep referencing it, is that it integrates consent into the journey. So rather than when you land on the website, a cookie banner pops up, it's actually, okay, well, here you go, have the website, go for it. And then when you go to a page and let's say there's an embedded YouTube video, if you click play, it's like, oh, by the way, we need a bit of consent to do this, right? Are you happy for this so that we can load you the YouTube video? But it's just that bit. You say yes, okay, move on. And it's like, okay, cool, we added something to basket. Cool, we need another cookie to do this. Okay, cool. It doesn't really matter if it's cookies or not, but it's about saying at each point you're only consenting to what you need and what things you're engaging with, rather than setting 15 different trackers, setting 30 cookies and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's this process of saying, okay, well, if you don't want it, it's fine. But, you know, if you want to watch this video, then this is where you need to drop a cookie, or we need, you know, non-necessary stuff to happen. The issue with that, and the reason why the tech giants, the marketing companies, won't ever suggest that, is because essentially you lose the landing page query string. So when you click an ad, you land on a page, you've got the G-Cleared, the FB click ID, the Microsoft click ID, any ad click IDs in that URL. If it can't track that first page, it's never going to be able to measure your marketing effectively. And so you've got this contradiction of the marketing companies are like, we need to track that first page, otherwise everything's broken. And then you've got the other side is, well, actually, we don't need to track that first page. Maybe we just wait until later in the journey. Oh, and when you get into the checkout, by the way, if you're happy, we need to set a cookie so you can use PayPal. You know, all that stuff like that. That is a much more user-friendly, and that's what IKEA did. And they were like, sod the marketing side, we're going to do the user-centric approach. But, you know, if we're only ever going to look at what Google suggests or Meta or Microsoft suggests, we're only ever going to do what's in their interests. And I think, you know, again, do you want to put the user first but take a hit on the marketing measurement? Do you want to put the marketing measurement first and actually maybe have a slightly less good user experience? All this stuff is, I think, really interesting conversation. But I think that's why I was drawn to the IKEA example so much, is because they weren't, we need to scrape this first page, we need to get this query string, we need to get these IDs done, because it's only marketing.
I think there's also going to be the shift in the expectations of being able to really track a whole customer journey through all the various touch points from start to end, where we just going to have more broken journeys, and there will be several journeys, and to just kind of really figure out for your own business which are the key touch points that you really need to kind of have a meaningful kind of measurement and tracking, and just really build your kind of measurement and tracking model around this as well.
Okay, so we're going to draw this to a close, but actually there have been people watching online. So hello to everyone watching online. And you may have been excited about our Brighton Fringe performer, but unfortunately they had to cancel at last minute. But don't worry, I'm going to do a mime performance for you. I'm not really. But yeah, so that just means we're going to call it a day, but we've got the room for another half an hour. So have a little mingle. There's more pastries.
If you come up with any more questions, exactly, approach us.
Yeah, I have one more question actually.
would I be able to put that in now, or do you want me to do it afterwards?
Well,
Is it
what do we think? Yeah, I mean, if everyone agrees that we're happy with that, then I'm happy.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm not a marketer, so this is a lot of language that is very new to me. And I'm also career switching into the world of development and figuring out how I can break into this commercially. And you've hinted at it with technical marketing. But then strictly as a developer, do you see that there's a niche where a developer could focus on to help take this on board and bring that to companies?
Yeah, it depends what you're developing. So, I mean, if we're thinking like web developer or like engineering, like from a data sort of developer, I suppose we can call it that, or programming machine learning models or whatever that looks like. I think it depends on where you want to focus, where you want to sit. But I think there's so many open doors for this world, like so many doors that are opening for what we have to do now. Like say, we just talk about first party data again. Like a lot of companies don't actually own their data, which is mad, right? And so there's a lot of people that are like, I need help doing that. How does one do that? How does one collect data? How does one, from the implementation to cookie banners to marketing data to organizing data to activating it, modeling it, pushing it back into these platforms? There's loads of development work that needs to go on through that process. Some tools exist out there that can then automate a lot of this stuff. But it goes back into the classic perspective of buy versus build. You'll get a lot in all this process is, does an organization want to build it themselves and it's an upfront cost or salaries, but then they save money in the long run? Or do you buy a software or piece of tech that does it on a monthly fee that then, if it gets switched off, it all stops working? But yeah, maybe we could talk about that afterwards. I've got a couple of my colleagues here that work in the development side that would be interesting to talk to, I think.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, because I don't know the answer to that in terms of where to lie and specialize as a developer and where that lies in terms of how it fits in with this consent. So it'd be great to hear where I could focus some energy.
Cool. Let's chat.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. So we've been
Thank you.
Trapeze Media. Daniel's been Measurelab, and Daniel and Dani and Kitty and Silicon Brighton. So thank you so much.